So, do you remember January 6th, 2021? That feeling of horror and nausea as a violent mob invaded the Capitol building? And then the aftermath, when we learned that the mob had smeared feces on the walls, as we heard the stories of demoralized members of the Capitol Police Force dying by suicide. You know, sometimes people behave abominably. And we hear these stories. We hear about frat boys and with tiki torches and mass shootings in schools, gay bars, churches, and synagogues. We hear about episodes of unnecessary, racially motivated police violence, stories about the mistreatment of refugees. The list goes on. And then there's the fact that we humans are also desecrating and destroying the natural world. We've been doing that for my entire lifetime. So, in response to these abominable things that human beings do, feelings rise up. There's horror, nausea, grief, kind of this aching disappointment that I live with. Why do people have to be so mean? Am I the only one? No, okay. And so, because that is true for me, I need to remember that if the sick feelings are revoltingly familiar, so is the process of moving on, moving through, moving beyond. I need to remember that each awful development invites me to rededicate myself to the values that I hold dear. This is a process of becoming ever more committed to embodying those values and working for them in the world, even when it seems like there's little to no chance of winning, at least in the short term. See, there's always something we can find to do, something kind, something generous, something creative. Often that something is small, and sometimes it seems irrelevant. But that is where faith comes in. Faith is choosing to believe that if I do this little thing that feels right to me to do, somebody else will do another little thing, and so on and so forth, and that all of the little things will eventually add up and make a real difference. Buddhist author Sharon Salzberg writes in her book, Faith, with their assumptions of correctness, beliefs try to make a known out of the unknown. They make presumptions about what is yet to come, how it will be, what it will mean, and how it will affect us. Faith, on the other hand, doesn't carve out reality according to our preconceptions and desires. It doesn't decide how we are going to perceive something, but rather is the ability to move forward even without knowing. While beliefs come to us from outside, from another person or a tradition or a heritage, faith comes from within, from our alive participation in the process of discovery. See, for Salzberg, faith is a verb. It's something we do, not something we have. It's a choice. And sometimes a choice we make in spite of much evidence that it's not going to make a difference. It's a choice to dedicate our lives and our love to the work of healing the world. The destruction, the desecration, the meanness are real, and we need to be present to them. We need to feel all those uncomfortable feelings that arise in response, but we also always need to be present to the human potential to respond in creative ways. Which leads me to a different inspiring Hanukkah story. This is a version shared by a native of Billings, Montana named Patrick Sauer, published in the Huffington Post. He writes, it started with some racist flyers on car windows at an MLK Day celebration. Other crimes included the destruction of some headstones at a Jewish cemetery, harassing phone calls to Jewish leaders, skinheads ominously standing in the back of a mass at the small African Methodist church, and finally spray-painted swastikas and Indian dye on a local woman's home. The town reacted quickly as 100 locals, including members of the Painters Union, got together at dawn one morning and repainted her house. The reaction spurred the thugs to step it up. They threw a piece of cinder block through the window of a 6-year-old Jewish boy's room because he had the gall to set up a celebratory menorah. The boy's parents contacted the Billings Gazette, and the editors decided to utilize the community in fighting back. They printed a full-page menorah and urged locals to hang it in their homes and businesses. Hundreds followed suit, which led to more anti-Semitic vandalism. If memory serves, they even threw a brick through the window of my alma mater, Billings Central Catholic High. Billings, however, didn't back down. Police Chief Wayne Inman urged more and more citizens to put up the menorahs, saying visible signs of support for the Jewish community have to increase, not decrease. For every vandalism that is made, I hope that 10 other people put menorahs in their windows. At its peak, some 10,000 citizens had menorahs in their windows, more than 10% of the population. I remember walking home from midnight mass on a wintry night and seeing all of the Christmas lights, which made the menorahs glow all that much brighter. My parents and my 3 brothers took the long way home, and house after house had taken the time to hang up a page from the newspaper in solidarity with the local Jewish community, which I'm guessing might have been 1,000 tops. It was incredibly moving. I was one of those staunchly Gen X kids, skeptical of what the power of the people could really accomplish and how things never change. I was wrong. He concludes, for one holiday season, Billings was the most amazing place on earth. So how are we called to respond creatively to acts that desecrate and diminish that which we hold dear? For example, let's think about the Idaho State Board of Education's recent decision to eliminate DEI programming at the universities. Is there a way to visibly indicate our continued commitment to diversity and equity? What might the equivalent to having everyone put menorahs in their windows be? That's a genuine question. Does anybody have any ideas? Yes?
I have suggested to them many times in the past to take down all of the pictures of old white men that are on the walls, because we have studies that show that it intimidates students, particularly young women. They don't feel like they belong there.
Okay, so we could take down all of the pictures of old white men on the walls of the University of Idaho. Yeah?
I want to counter that statement.
Oh, let's not go there. Yeah, this is a brainstorm. Brainstorm, we just come up with ideas. Any other? Yeah. What if we ordered all sorts of progressive rainbow flags that have all of the colors and invited people to put them up all over town? That's a great idea. Yeah, so, you know, there could be signs, there could be, anyway, so let's keep thinking about it and let's keep talking about it, because there's gotta be something to do. See, oppression, the structures of oppression rely on fear and greed. And fear and greed motivate acts of violence and desecration. I'm not so naive that I don't recognize just how powerful fear and greed are when it comes to manipulating people and bullying them. The corrupted version of belonging offered by white supremacist and other extremist groups seem to be compelling to many people who otherwise feel lost and alone. But here's the thing. All people want to be safe and loved and free. All people have the capacity for empathy. That means there's always hope. There's always hope that we might tap into that empathy, create a sense of human solidarity, and together build that world we dream of that has peace and justice and equity for all. With each act that desecrates, we need to rededicate ourselves to our values. We need to keep becoming braver and wiser and more loving. We need to keep building relationships, first and foremost with those who are at risk of harm, but also with the folks who feel differently than we do, those who are trapped by their own fear and greed and ignorance. What is good in us can connect with what is good in them and inspire them to take one of those million small steps out of captivity toward freedom and joy. Ultimately, it's not really about winning. It's about more and more of us doing what's right. It's about staying true to our values, living with integrity and courage. We've got to live as if the world we dream of is not only possible, but inevitable. The fact that it's taking longer than I'd like for humanity to figure out how to care for each other and the planet, maybe longer than you'd like to, it doesn't mean we're not ever going to get it. It doesn't mean it's too late. Or even if it is too late in some ways, we're still not off the hook. We have to let our light shine, not in spite of the horror and grief and loss, but in response to it. Now, I'm wondering if that last sentence sounds a little familiar to those of you who came to the service on Christmas Eve. Just a little. For that matter, I think there were echoes of it in the solstice ritual on the 21st. And there's a reason for that. It's not that I have a one-track mind. Religion, any religion, when it's practiced with integrity, becomes a force that brings out the best in humanity. It's meant to support us in being more noble and honest and caring and compassionate. And almost all of the religious myths call us to embrace diversity, to love justice and mercy, to care for the poor and the downtrodden. Religion is supposed to be the counterweight to the forces of empire that divide and conquer and oppress and exploit. And the fact that it's so often corrupted and co-opted by people in the thrall of empire, that's on the people who do it, not on the religious traditions themselves. The militant Zionists who are dehumanizing and bombing Gaza, they're betraying the spirit at the heart of their Jewish faith. Just as Christian nationalists have abandoned Christianity in the pursuit of power. Now, former pastor John Pavlovitz writes, "It's been fairly up by a violent, bullying, gun-toting, whitewashed, don't tread on me cultural smallness that has nothing in common with the generous, open-hearted, least loving Christ of the Gospels." He goes on to laud progressive faith communities like this one, which are doing, in his words, joy-giving, life-affirming, wall-leveling work alongside people of every color, orientation, and nation of origin. Atheists and Muslims and Jews and agnostics have stepped into these communities and found shared affinity in the defense of disparate humanity and respect for the planet. No one could have predicted that theologically diverse congregations with a high percentage of atheists and agnostics like ours would wind up being the keepers of traditional religious values. But here we are. And I think in part it has to do with the way we hold these things as stories, not truth, with respect, but also lightness and liveliness. So, to be clear, all of the holidays we celebrate in this season of long nights and short days are distinct. They all have their own stories, traditions, and messages. And all of these stories point us toward being better, braver, kinder, and more gentle people, because that is what religion exists to do. So whatever chaos or difficulty we face in the days and years to come, know that this place will continue to be a sanctuary and a bright light. We will not normalize hate, and we will do all we can to hold accountable people who act abominably. We aren't just a loving and progressive community, we are a religious community. And our job, our purpose, is to lift each other up and call forth the best in one another. What we do matters, now and always. So be it, and so may it be.